This video presentation is for those of you, for those of us who are already familiar with the fact that dark reptilian species and grays, both with look-alike holograms and superhuman capacities and very advanced technologies, have been on Earth farming relatively retarded humans for a very long time. If you are not even remotely retarded, go on and hit that subscribe button. Stay along for the journey. This video presentation, this series of video presentations will be about how to escape the digital matrix. What else would it be about? All right, we're going to be talking about awakening, escaping the digital matrix by self-empowerment, recognizing your own God-given, source-provided programs of self-empowerment from the divine grid programming, awakening and recognizing what we're really seeing in this artificial intelligence hive mind digital matrix. We're going to talk about how this alien soul mining may be acting upon you, this digital matrix, how it basically imprisons you with the energies of your lower three chakras, the essential, the survival chakras, the solar plexus, ego-oriented energies, your sacral and your root chakra with your survival and your sexual energies and reproductive and all of that. We're going to talk about denials, diversions within the digital matrix, the soul traps, and about how to escape, like I said, escaping this digital matrix. First of all, my dear and esteemed viewer, we have to talk about semantics and what words mean and how they can mean different things to different people based on what the context of their mental landscape happens to be. This is like somebody has put all our ideas and ideologies into a blender and come up with a chunky and funky mixture of stuff we recognize, but which can be a bit inappropriate and contradictory if we don't have the same terms and we're not on the same page with the terminology and such. And exopolitics, like any other human institution, is exposed to the same problems of semantic chaos and its contradictions, often issued from people with the robes of credibility, with the auspices, under the auspices of officialdom, who appear to be no more than professional decoys, deep state plants, deep state decoys with an elaborately constructed cul-de-sac for the sheeple. These charades begin with credible constructions, then end up in cynical science fiction and unbelievable assertions. The problem with our allegedly human institutions, therefore, are their inbuilt redundancies that seem to be caused by people who have a mind to deliberately perpetrate chaos. The anti-human performance of the United Nations, for example, in its long-term advocacy of population reduction to save the ecosystem of this planet, is in truth a blatant social crime. Clearly, if the human race were allowed to freely use the anti-gravity and free energy technology and technological paradigm on the table industrially since at least 1890 with Faraday, and then variously with many others throughout the 20th century, we would be able to clean and purify our planet, supply and resupply it from farming interests elsewhere, and take no part whatsoever in the desolate and polluting industries that the United Nations Industrial Development Organization first identified in the late 1960s. As being in possession of clean and cheap factories, there would be no need to produce oceans of toxic waste, such as in the Brazil area. Aliens, or alleged aliens, who allegedly postpone dealing with humanity because we cannot get our act together, are actually anti-human aliens aiding and abetting the cull, the harvest, or indeed the soul harvest. Other engaging social charades to help us all get through the day include government, civil administrations, religious organizations, and the transnational corporate world, networks, secret societies, think tanks, operating conspiracies of self-interest, black ops, career intelligence agencies, MJ-12, criminal intelligence agencies. All of these can get our yummy outrage juices flowing for the benefit of our farmers, the louche farmers. Inside almost every one of these scenarios is an endless alphanumeric soup that is compartmentalized, chaotic, antagonistic, sometimes synergistic, often ineffective, always fiscally wasteful, always producing its own version of winners and losers. It is more than likely that these agencies have to deal with all sorts of infiltrations, abduction, reprogramming, and replacement of their key personnel from a dark alien threat. In this light, therefore, it is unlikely that any benign ET civilization intent on doing good for mankind would interact with this dark and incoherent circus called a global social hierarchy. It can be argued that the chaos and negation and nihilism that our alleged society is laced with is a deliberate essence-feeding strategy by reptograde farmers who may feed off of and milk our outrage juices. Our tendency to self-vindicate is often very predictable, especially in a potentially predatory social and telepathic environment with personal spiritual issues that we cannot always immediately recognize. Intervention by benign ETs therefore would not be effective if it used these self-canceling agencies. It could also be said that if benign ETs just stood back, that everybody would just gravitate to their own familiar reality and millions of people would go to millions of other places naturally. For example, during a catastrophic geological revision of the mountains and oceans of this planet, on this planet. That, however, doesn't account for the fact that some people on Earth are being made to feel that they should go to a certain place with certain beings in an artificial and trauma-driven way. The beginning of a benign ET intervention that accounts not just for the individual, however, but for large social groups of individuals has to start with one generic social missive and communication. What strategy might they take? For example, use of Earth-based pop stars like Robbie Williams, acknowledged leaders in hierarchies and gurus. The innate resistance to truth and change within some of these channels merely adds to the chaos. Because of this, I suspect that the process will involve the total subsumation of the telecommunications and media network created by overriding advanced technology that will neutralize the current reptograde media franchise and its own brand of interstellar junk. Advanced and benign ETs will totally bypass the status quo on planet Earth with all of its taint and anti-human failures. I predict that we will all collectively see a whole new brand of television and radio and internet options for the duration of the reparation process supplied by the benevolent ETs. The Alliance. Reptograde farmers could try this one on us too, but then I'm certain that the highest frequency civilization processing the most ones and zeros in the least time is an angelic one and would prevail. That, for the first time since the fall of Atlantis 20,000 years ago, which also roughly coincided with the last geological catastrophe we underwent, there will be massive changes amongst the temporary farming charades, albeit 20,000 years of temporary farming, and those locked into and oriented by physical, social, historic, spiritual, and ideological landmarks will be able to detach and potentially escape with help. At that point, real exopolitics will come into play. And I predict that such exopolitics will involve the company of angels, superior technology and infrastructure, and the presence of other beings from this cosmos who wish to reclaim their soul group members before they get farmed off to some other factory or franchise. If there are deep politics within the human population, it is the secrets of our ancient knowledge and heritage and family groups that we as older souls naturally possess. From there, we can make a new choice, whether we embrace the way of life and become high-frequency loving life forms, empowered beyond biology and clones, and the fires and combustions of the reptograde hell and desolation and the games of being vampire or dust, we have a chance to inherit a realm of love and beauty instead. At that point, exopolitics becomes the politics of ascension or dissension. But it will be above and separate from the cynical charades of toxic pseudo-human, and infiltrated reptograde agencies. It can be seen from some of our academic material that for some time now, all is not right with our view of the world. We have physics and cosmology, and sciences and paradoxes that refuse change and solutions, and whole ways of doing things seemingly entrenched in obsolete technologies and fuels and medicines. And we have everywhere some war or rumor of war. I suggest that things in our status quo have very much been like that every century for thousands of years. There is always some dark, evil wolf of human political fabrication at the edge of the pasture to keep the flock nervous. Yet for every century that passes, the news of the dark alien underground and what goes on there has always supplied us with stories of magical people and their shape-shifting technologies and often evil friends. Cave paintings, standing stone carvings, ancient monumental sculptures, European Renaissance paintings, the Roswell first contact myth. We have always had some dysfunctional and unprogressive human society that seems to go nowhere, while at our fringes in the dark woods of our nightmares, at the pasture's edge lurk the alien brigands who would usurp the flock portrayed in the cultural media of the day. Historically, though, the planet's surface seems to be stuck in zones like the film Westworld. Around 1000 AD, looking in depth at the academic reasoning behind the non-use of the Chinese Navy over a period of 500 years, which comprised of a fleet of heavily armored, highly maneuverable, flat-topped paddle boats that were armed with cannons, we see a glaring paradox. In 500 years of massive fiscal demands that would relocate capital cities and equip numerous armies, etc., no one allegedly had the idea to take even a portion of that fleet south, hugging the coast and water supplies into the Indian or Arabian Ocean in search of gold. But the only explanation offered for this is that either strangers interfered or that they, as a people, had a patient and resigned shopkeeper mentality. But neither of these explanations is sufficient. They conducted trade and imports from India, which also contributed to their culture and architecture, so they knew of the Raj kingdoms and palaces. It is an incredible fact, though, that the Navy was allegedly never used for that purpose of conquest, yet they had overwhelming technological superiority till the arrival of the East India Company hundreds of years later. How could some martial arts warlord never have the idea to leave the Chinese version of the Truman Show or Groundhog Day in search of loot to finance some of those massive campaigns? What changed their minds to prevent their global conquest? The particle physics of Lord Kelvin and his atomic vortex theory of 1901 is actually a more advanced particle physics model than the one we are using in the 21st century. Also, Tesla's theory of environmental energy ought to have been enough at the start of the 20th century to give us a future. Instead, we toy with insoluble mathematical conundrums and elite mind games that can never progress past a central fatal flaw and inbuilt mathematical redundancy. No such joy, however, as most of us start to notice on a journey round our local bookstore, the remix and duplication and unoriginality in even more dumbed-down formats, multimedia devices for youth culture with tiny display units totally fail to convey anything good. Education exams for children in the 18th and 19th century appear to look more and more like postgraduate university degrees, with their mathematical components and science and medical sciences totally failed to deliver for the human race, certainly at any price that they could afford to pay. 2/3 of the population of this planet have no social concept of coffee and cake, whilst in African village pancakes made out of dust and sugar are served up to the starving. In these grotesque and alien and unhumanly engineered social circumstances, then, we see time and time again the failure of every social charade we have been counting on to deliver. Junk physics, unending cancers, incurable paradoxes, and diseases, while millions of contactees are spiritually tuned in, simply cannot write a chemical formula for a cure down on paper napkins sent by some wise alien king of alleged love and light. The aliens themselves, entrenched in farming this disoriented herd, suspiciously seem to be farming our souls from some accounts, and other accounts point to some impending harvest. After this harvest, they allege that their victims will inherit better biology next time. Yet the eternal soul, in all its manifestations as a truly living and empowered being, does not need or use biology or biological constraints, being empowered by a network of living and free life. It is only the dead that have future need of biology, and of course, biological beings need to eat, even clever alien ones. We mill about in our stock pens, looking at the entropy and social disease in the culture and media and utilities and in our own security and geology, whilst others with less than human agendas parade powers of illusion and mastery of matter and shape and display technologies, skills, memories of events and places beyond the human horizons. And perhaps if we are human, we realize that our own human condition, for some reason we agreed to before we were born, is artificial. It cannot be reasoned that we don't have these massive capacities too. It's just that either genetically or by some other magical or telepathic or technological control, we cannot access him at this point. We have no access to our special powers. Look at satellite photographs. And I can see, looking at my own area, I can see alien observation droids parked above my dwellings and of others. I've seen them. Special forces in contact have suggested that they are in the possession of visioning equipment that can see all the stuff that's flying about, and that if we had this kind of technology, we might see a very different kind of world. We hear of the reptilians and their alliance with the Greys, and that humanity, according to a series of Norwegian statues in Oslo, are their thralls. If this is so, then let us ask some important questions about the things we take for granted. This place is deliberately diseased and retarded cul-de-sac, in my opinion. If oil ran out somewhere, these beings would probably manufacture it for our use. We know that they can abduct anyone, anywhere, and program or replace them. So does the rule not apply to our many and various politicians and leaders and captains of industry? In a planet that has been managed and successfully zoned for thousands of years, its science and technological development suppressed whenever necessary to keep the planet's surface backwards, the one word that could sum up or describe the quality of the entire evolutionary output of this planet is almost. On planet almost, therefore, where people are being herded about and distressed and supplied and resupplied by global industries and a global food chain, how do we know that the whole container ships coming from China and their cargoes are not abducted and substituted as well? How do we know that our little bits and pieces of household material doesn't have other inclusions in it as well? To believe that is a psychiatric condition called Capgras syndrome, which more commonly is the belief that someone you know and love is now an alien substitute. That's spelled C-A-P-G-R-A-S, Capgras syndrome. There have to be genuine sufferers of this disorder, but from what we know, maybe some people are not so deluded. On planet Almost, many people in the Western world have a computer, mostly running Microsoft operating systems and software, a luxury not extended to probably 70% of the population of this planet. One hears stories that the CPU, the chip that is at the heart of our home PC, is designed after the floor plan of an Egyptian temple, and that the enigmatic Bill Gates has some sort of Stargate happening at his headquarters. Stuff like this might well be fanciful comic book material, which may or may not link into other aspects of Matrix-like virtual reality and semi-scientific transhumanism, cyborgs, and Matrix uploads. However, one thing is for certain, with your Windows software, in that you will always be looking at the top left of the screen. In neural linguistic programming, or NLP, which was developed from presumably secret military research, e.g., example, the Monroe Institute, we have the idea that the eyes looking in certain directions are accessing either logical or imaginative faculties, real truths or fabrications. So, could it be that our creative imagination is somehow being conditioned to expect a top left-hand corner input or some sort of network link? Is our top left visual field a window into our creative imagination? We almost landed stuff on Mars and the moon again. We almost have a space program. We almost have a theory of relativity that works. We almost have free energy. We almost have cures for this and that. We almost have a computer and software that finally operates to spec. We almost have a food shortage, economic collapse, and nuclear war. And we almost have full disclosure. We most certainly have reptograde soul farming and chaos theater from all this creative distress. The fact that actually goes on is advertised in the stained glass of the 13th century Lincoln Cathedral in England, where you see St. Theophilus being handed a soul capture device by a reptilian devil. I think how the process works is that tiring human beings, absolutely fazed and dazzled by the superhuman craftsmanship of some very strange competitors in their own line of business, sell themselves out to some masterful type that promises them their dreams by a process of enlightenment. The acquisition of a little helper or attachment, a demon, as more recently advertised in the film The Golden Compass. If the human being can detach from the world, this strange series of dysfunctional social charades, arguably designed to milk the person of their good stuff, is going to matter less. Then perhaps merely losing their dreams to some telepathic thief and then watching others live your dream instead of you is not such a hard thing. I remember having a melody stolen from myself on more than one occasion to then hear it manifest in the most grandiose circumstances, for example. Many creative people complain of being ripped off all the time in any case. Realistically, though, they may have been telepathically hacked and ripped off. There are several times in my life when I thought that I needed glasses. My eyesight, though, would recover back to its very sharp normality. I then noticed that after mixing with certain kinds of people, some of whom seemed reptilian, that my eyesight would become distorted for a while. But thanks to angelic love and healing, it would always return to clarity. I want to share just a little verse from Matthew chapter 6, verse 22. The light of the body is the eye. If therefore thine eye be single, the whole body shall be full of light. One night, after a reptilian-esque interaction with a person, we had been following some unsettling line of discourse, and I felt that my heart center had become slightly depleted. My eyesight had then become slightly distorted, but it was soon restored. I went to bed and slept well, but just before it was time to rise, I had a torrid dream that seemed to replay the unsettling argument of the night before, such that when I awoke, my eyesight was not its usual clear self. I prayed and asked why this was proceeding as a victory for dark things when I sat down and stared out of a window, attempting to relax my eyes. Suddenly, I saw what I was being asked to account for. It was an etheric implant that had been distorting my vision. It was a long, narrow, metallic light-colored oblong shape. My angel then removed it, and very shortly afterwards, my eyesight returned to clarity. I realized suddenly the amazing analogy between our physical bodies and the reality in which we all live. In entering into a physical discourse that diminished the quality of my hope and aspirations, I had allowed a person to have an impact on my spiritual clarity and destiny. I had allowed a worldly argument to impact upon my spiritual life, and my connection with my replenishing vision of eternity had become blocked, with obvious physical impact upon my health. To me, the internet could theoretically be a place of real spiritual hardship for many people that could have direct impacts upon their physical as well as spiritual health. If groups of beings gain their essences by pruning and sucking the energies from human containers in these discussions, they could also have an occult but very direct impact on our physical quality of life as well. I have suggested that we need to be connected to the vine of John 15 so that we get resupplied and mended and sustained by Holy Spirits. None of these realities herein described are the realities that we would have learned about in any formal or established way. Yet many of us suspect that at least some of it could be true. It's probably good news for us that all the social, cultural, and spiritual landmarks upon which the human will and ego extends and maps itself for the benefits of its alien farmers could get shortly erased by either geological or climactic catastrophe. That would mean for the cattle that it was time to up stakes. Whatever beef we have with whoever is operating our Disneyland will have to be abandoned for a process more often referred to as a harvest. Some are even being told to look forward to bigger and better biology, which probably means there is a planet somewhere full of giant kangaroos. High energy souls and all high-frequency life forms are well beyond biology and zoology and biological reproduction and gestation and cloning as well. It is a consolation for these beings that wish to proceed with letting their souls get reprocessed that in the universe of biology, their worm does not die, nor their fires go out. But I personally know someone who is looking forward to inhabiting and migrating between all sorts of animal life under the grave. That's his choice, though. There are realms and realities beyond here and beyond biology. Most of us are certain of such things, but we need to also look to our loving brothers and sisters in these places to help us out of this stockyard earth. My heart is with Christ, not with any human temporal institution. Others will choose another way. But I know that my choice has fulfilled my life and has allowed me to escape the digital matrix. If you wish to escape the digital matrix and learn further tactics and knowledge regarding this planet, this farm that we've been living on Earth, and how to get to the new Earth, the golden age, I want you to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Stay tuned, folks. There'll be more video transmissions coming from the Ombanda New Earth Education Center for Consciousness and Digital Matrix Escape Techniques.
Namaste. Namaskaram.